Um, First of all, welcome. Um, we're going into 2024, and today I want to talk about how a joy practice makes a difference in your experience and how you live. These times are ridiculously challenging. There's a lot of things that are showing up to be addressed in how we live together and behave. And so it's really ugly. And I personally don't like that stuff around me. But how do you live in spite of it? I mean, there's, a lot of people are afraid that we might have a third world war and all that kind of stuff. And, so it's a very uncomfortable time. We are going to discuss how turning towards practical realities and crafting a life built on a joy practice. It empowers you in a way you can't get otherwise and makes these times easier. And we'll discuss this because it's so important that we find a healthy way to move forward, especially since our cultural models, which are hierarchical, are being challenged and I think ultimately will be released in favor of a healthier and a more grounded approach to life. We're going to discuss the idea of the upper hand, how it has limited us for too long, how it has influenced human life, and why it needs to change. And we'll discuss how the foundational requirement for sacrifice, which has supported these hierarchical social systems, is no longer sustainable, how it has to give, and how to do so with grace. So a joy practice frees us in a constructive way. And it enables us to address the harmful legacy of the past in a way that is healing for us and enables us to feel good about ourselves. So often our ability to feel good about ourselves is taken away from us, and we need to restore that. So there are so many freeing and exciting benefits from a joy practice. Empowerment is not just about flexing your muscles. It's also about ending the fight with life that's been imposed on all of us through a variety of narratives, ideologies, demands, and obligations that only take us away from the good in life. We need to reclaim our relationship with ourselves, each other, and life. A joy practice makes it possible to do so in a beautiful way. It makes it possible for us to breathe easier and finally to live again rather than to feel under the gun so much. I am so sick of all the aggression. I have a feeling I'm not alone, or you wouldn't be here. So we're going to talk about how to remove some of that from our lives. And so I'm going to try to keep this around an hour, but I will stay longer if there are questions. And feel free to raise your hand if something comes up for you where you want to ask a question along the way. So I wanted to start today with a statement by Carl Jung, and I had never seen this before, but it's something that I have seen over and over again to be true. And he said that the pendulum of the mind oscillates between sense and nonsense, not between right and wrong. And I think he's right. Your ability to identify what makes sense and what is nonsense resides in your body. It's an energetic wisdom, among other things. It's also an experiential wisdom. And so you can feel it. A lot of our ideas about right and wrong support the authoritarian and patriarchal models of the past. Right and wrong are mostly ideas designed to get your submission and ultimately turn over your life to others. In essence, to give up your power. These ways of shaping human culture demand your obedience and therefore your capitulation. That means that entitlement rules, not wisdom. Many of our current messy conflicts are about the claims of entitlement. A lot of the anger we are seeing expressed violently is about the denial of that entitlement. There is a strong correlation between entitlement and cruelty, and I believe it's being exposed all around the world for the purpose of change. The nonsense that entitlement creates has become too much of a burden. And we're going to discuss how a joy practice takes us out of this. So this is our agenda. We're going to talk about why this matters. I'm going to talk about my experience and what needs to change and why. I'm going to talk about what a joy practice changes. we're going to talk about the why of our times. This is a very special time that enables us to make changes that I don't think were possible before. And there is a way for us to take ourselves out of these systems that just grind us down. Then we're going to talk about joy as an experience and the gifts that come from a joy practice. How do we do this? And then I'm going to talk about the new monthly program and what's involved in all of that. So let's talk about why all of this matters. Whoops, sorry, that's my phone. I'm sure it is nothing important. Spam call. Okay, so let me talk about why in my early years I discovered this path that I needed to take. I found that people were talking at me, they expected from me, but there was not an actual give and take in the conversation with others. In fact, there really wasn't a conversation. And it was as if I was expected to be like a piece of furniture in a story that had nothing to do with me. And from what I could see was unkind and unpleasant. Basically, it was ugly. And I knew it couldn't be my path. I found it very offensive. This is the thing, though. Once you step outside of that norm or the accepted, you have to start figuring out a different way. And just because something isn't your path and not where you belong, that doesn't mean you know what your path actually is. And even if you're fortunate enough to know, and some people know early in life, I'm going to be a journalist or I'm going to be a that, how do you even get there if you know that your path is different? You need a way to move forward. And it's especially difficult to do so when there are no models, because you have to not only believe in yourself while you're being taught not to, which is nasty, but then you also have to figure everything out for yourself. And that's challenging enough in normal times, if there is such a thing, but especially difficult during times of upheaval like now. There is probably no time of greater upheaval than the times we're living in now. I knew I didn't want to give up what was true about me, and I needed to have some integrity for my own sake and everyone else's. I also needed the positive spirit of friendship in my life, and I wanted to be able to sleep at night knowing that I had done the best that I could. In a lot of ways, that's what you need to have some peace in your life. And what I really wanted was a grounded, healthy way of life. And unfortunately, there was no peace or satisfaction in my family in my early years. It was a very unhealthy environment. And so I became determined to find a way that would work. I knew I deserved better, but I also think that we all do. And because my early environment was so mean-spirited, I worked diligently to process my experience and the energies I had around it and understand it as best as I could. Because I was afraid that if I shut down, I would become a person I could not stand. Essentially, when you shut down, because of the toxicity of our system, they basically have you. You become unfeeling. And so I also recognized that mean-spiritedness was not necessary because I tried to change it unsuccessfully. And that was very sobering and made me a very serious person at a very young age. But my experience spurred me to find a new way because I knew it didn't have to be the way it was. And making sure I processed my energy and seeking ways to understand what I was experiencing has been instrumental in helping me create the joy practice, which invites a humane and grounded foundation for living. And I've been fortunate to have discovered cultural models to help me understand social and cultural patterns that, when combined with my own processing work, provide a way to turn our mind, energy, emotions, and experience into a kind of inner team working harmoniously inside of us and also with nature and reality. So we don't have to have all the conflicts and pain that we have. So what has to change in terms of the world around us? Well, we've been conditioned to a world structured hierarchically, patriarchally, ideologically, and religiously, and it's failing. These older approaches to human organization are unsuitable for the more complex and educated times we live in and are not up to collaborative working and problem solving. You may have noticed a lot of resistance to collaborative problem solving. So these ways are unraveling because they're invested in the idea of having the upper hand, which is incompatible with the collaborative approaches that are emerging to take their place. Essentially, they're not ecological, they're domineering, and often based on cruelty in order to maintain the upper hand. We do not have to get into a big confrontation with these various social forms to change things, in spite of evidence that they're looking for a fight. And that's the good news. What we have to do is reclaim practicality. If there's one essential ingredient missing from human life, it's that. And it's why we're failing ourselves in each other as a species. It helps to know that we each can do something about it. There's a huge amount of empowerment and hope in that. So let me take a moment to talk about what I mean by practicality, because to many, it means a kind of depressed attitude about reality. Oh, this is the best we can do, and reality is awful, and all that kind of thing. Or alternatively, it could mean expedience to some, represents that to some people, which can be a little bit sleazy. And that's not what we're talking about here. So when I say practicality, I mean being present. I mean being connected to nature and natural rhythms and being in touch with ourselves and our surroundings. It means showing up to do what we need to do to support ourselves and create quality of life around us. It means having a good foundation so the challenges of life are easier to handle because we're not trying to overcome or function in spite of deficits of various kinds. And it means being on solid ground so the good and beautiful aspects of life can be enjoyed wholeheartedly. One of the wonderful features of this kind of groundedness is the wholeheartedness we get to enjoy. But unfortunately, that's not what we have. Cultures gain control, the upper hand, over their members in various ways. There are legal ways, there are social norms, and then there are energetic ways. And one of the energetic ways is through trauma. When you suffer trauma, your energy is taken by the trauma, and it becomes unavailable for your life. Essentially, you've been sidetracked. Trauma is a great way to gain control over someone else by debilitating them. And to make it even more difficult, we naturally seek healing after experiencing trauma. We want to sort of right the ship and restore ourselves to our right place. And what we discover often is that there will not be accountability, apology, or any other redress of the harm. Ancient top-down authoritarian and hierarchical systems think they're entitled to have you be what they want. So they don't think it's wrong to harm you to get your compliance. They don't recognize equality or your agency as valid. Why? Because our world has been built on sacrifices of many kinds. And although you may be able to create helpful boundaries, it's important to let go of the idea that you will be considered an equal or a friend, because seeking that status and being continually disappointed can grind you down and take you out of building your own life. People who have been marginalized know this only too well, and it's especially important right now as we gradually shed these old ways of organizing ourselves, that you let go of the hope that the ancient authoritarian ways will be reformed. They don't want it. And you can see that in the world in some of these conflicts that are going on. When you allocate energy to a false hope, it can leave you bitter if you're not careful. So a joy practice makes it much easier to channel your energy into ways of living that feel wonderful and self-honoring, which are healing and also freeing, without necessarily getting into a fight. One of the biggest traumas is the demand or expectation that we live according to norms and expectations that are actually destructive. The more we're held to norms that are harmful against our will, the more a culture has claimed our energy for its benefit and the greater its control over us. A joy practice frees you from this because by its nature, it is very constructive. Hold on a second, Sarah's going to admit her. So it's important to also understand, welcome, Sarah. We're just getting started. So it's important for you to understand that our identities don't come from us. We learn about ourselves by interacting with others through the norms of our social groups. We define ourselves based on feedback. What happens, though, when the feedback is wrong or harmful? When we define ourselves by the definitions and expectations of our social system, which we do when we're young, we have more difficulty because our cultures are not the wisest in their demands and expectations. If they were, we probably would not have the mess we have or the mental health issues. It's imperative that we have a way to support ourselves through the big changes of our time, and a joy practice provides a way to do so that's easy on you and on others. It is absolutely amazing to me how much of our inner talk is really just the internalization of these kinds of cultural systems. So, what does a joy practice change? Well, first of all, it changes your perspective, how you process information, how you process energy, and how you make choices. Essentially, it changes or relocates your center of gravity which is your energetic center on the inside, out of the outmoded and harmful social energies of the past, still present today, into joy-based ones. It gives you a new foundation that is healthy and feels good and helps you reshape your perceptions about what you think and feel to be more in line with reality and the truth. There is a lot of deception in our cultures because throughout human history, hierarchical and authoritarian systems which have dominated human culture have developed a lot of expertise in what is essentially psychological warfare or control intended to keep you subordinate and small. And when I say small, I'm talking about not growing into who you could be or who you even really are. I'm not talking about egomania. So you need a way to live your truth and be constructive at the same time. And a joy practice makes that possible. Because we're mostly invalidated, especially when we're young, but also throughout our lives, it can be difficult to believe in yourself. A joy practice gives you a way to change that. It makes it possible to take back your life as a constructive, healthy way, so you're not stuck in depression, rebellion, or dropping out. It provides you with a way to create a path to a way of living that you will enjoy and be proud of. It takes you on a journey to an inner space that makes room for a natural, healthy, and nourishing energy. Today, I'll provide you a good overview of the shift in experience that a joy practice offers and the results that come from it. I'm serious about getting untrapped and staying there. So basically, a joy practice takes you out of these old cultural systems, but gives you a way to live that's healthy and nourishing and it's low conflict. So you have to have a way to live if you're not going to live within these cultural models. All right, so let's talk about why at this particular point this is so important. It is very important at any time that you have your mind, your body, emotions, and energy connected and working together well. But given the way we have been taught to connect them in order to fit into cultural systems, we will have to start to correct them differently. And a joy practice makes that easier, and I think it's a relief. We are in the process of an immense transition from capitalism to an egalitarian and ecological cultural system, from authoritarian and hierarchical structures to democratic ones, and from the theme of survival to a new story about thriving, which is very, very different. This is a unique point in human history. We have never been here before. And so if we want to weather and even thrive because of all of these changes, we need all the help we can get. And we cover this when we explore cultural patterns on one of our calls in January. Learning about patterns has been one of the important developments of the past 50 to 70 years and is one of the reasons we can now create a new, different foundation for human life that will restore health to us as individuals and the planet. This really is the important work of our time. The strong desire to get out of the abusive ways of the past has been the impetus for this learning. The changes we're going through are part of a larger evolutional process that has taken place over thousands of years that you will learn about and which will help you feel much more in control of your life. You'll start to learn that you can detach from the oppressive energies of the old systems that can cause you to feel hopeless, which is one of their objectives. Creating hopelessness is an important tool of control, and it's nonsense. Jung will be proud of us as we get rid of all of this nonsense. Our energy, when grounded and free, turns into a guide to keep us in touch with what creates joy and notices what is less supportive. And with a joy practice, your mind, your body, your emotions, and energy come into harmony in a way that you can't do otherwise. Life in the human world has been distorted by the idea that life is a fight and that it is a war. And that definition of life is incorrect. Just because it's challenging, that doesn't mean that that definition is correct. And it's finally coming under greater scrutiny. A joy practice helps us live well and make the best of things by living in the ever-changing present in a connected and wholesome way. When we do this, we take confidence, hope, quality of life into our own hands in a way that works for us and others. We can claim a natural and healthy abundance. We become the creators of the beauty in the world, which is a lovely role to have. The ideas underlying our social systems matter. What do we do, however, when our social systems are built on foundations that are incorrect or misguided? And I think I'm being quite kind. People talk about being present all the time, and that's important, but what do you do when your culture isn't? We need to ask ourselves, what do I do when my culture limits me to outdated norms? What happens when we struggle to solve real problems and it's not happening? Or outdated norms create blocks to needed change? What happens when a cultural system met our needs in the past and doesn't now? We are wired to connect, so what happens when the basis for connection is unhealthy? Can we find a different way that feels good for ourselves and others also? And that's the point of the magic of joy approach to enable us to do that. The fearful and negative mindset, which has been the human story for thousands of years, is reinforced again and again like a broken record. And as a result, we are repeatedly re-traumatized because the record is still playing quite a bit. We can do many things like meditation, breathing exercises to support ourselves, but often it feels like it's not enough. And that is why we need something different. We need the discernment that helps us to navigate to what supports our well-being and is wise for the times we live in. The discernment you get at the Magic of Joy helps you to do that. But most importantly, because we discuss the patterns, it's not just my telling you what to think. When you learn about the patterns, you'll be able to see the dynamics underlying unhealthy forms of cultural structures and socially sanctioned ways of relating. We explore this a lot so you can develop your own conclusions and therefore your own inner resources about culture and relationships. This is really important for you to understand. We have made individuals responsible for the dysfunction in our cultures. And with a joy practice, you remove yourself from having any responsibility whatsoever for this dysfunction. It's not your problem, and you have to release yourself from it. That can be a little bit difficult sometimes because we're connected to people who may be embedded in that. That's been a challenge for me with my family. And I understand that that's not exactly pleasant, but nonetheless, you are offering yourself as someone who is willing to support the good in the world. And that's a gift, even if other people can't see it. Change can be good, and it can be an enjoyable process for us when we create a joy practice that lets us shift out of current social and cultural arrangements into ones that are friendlier and healthier. The joy practice is friendly. It's friendly to you, it's friendly to others, it's friendly to the world. And as a result, it is healthier. There's less violence and conflict as a result. And although the decline of our social systems is a hard thing to experience, I find it difficult. Our best bet is to turn it into a window for reshaping our lives to ones that are more respectful to us and the earth. We will all be able to relax much more, and when we do, we will thrive more at the same time. Producing, which is what we're trained to do, is not the same thing as thriving. You can produce anything, including destructive products. Thriving, though, only serves quality of life, and we need an approach that will support creating quality of life. So the current world we have, which is very war-based and very fear-based, and fear is very short-sighted. It's the nature of fear. It focuses your attention on a fear. It's very short-sighted. But if you're going to have thriving, you have to create a world that supports us in the present and in the future. So it's much more long-sighted. So creating a new culture based on thriving is going to force us to become much more long-sighted. And I think nature is demanding that of us as well. Okay. So how does a joy practice change our experience? So let's start discussing that. It changes us energetically. It connects the dots between history, culture, identity, emotions, energy, and experience. And that enables you to have a freedom that feels good, and while we're at it, a success that also feels good, because you are releasing all of the nonsense that has claimed our time and energy from these old cultural systems. And they are demanding that you stay in the fold, but I think that's going to change. There's so much manipulation in our culture that we need to get the dots connected to regain control over our lives. We need to get that connection between nonsense and sense cleared up so that we know what's nonsense and what makes sense. And a joy practice makes that much easier because it connects you with the good in yourself, others, in life. And so it connects you with what makes sense rather than a world built on nonsense. So it's really freeing in that regard. We do think that we'll be cared for by our cultures, and that's not irrational. But when that does not happen, we can feel disappointed, especially when we give a lot. And what we're not told is that human societies have been built on a lot of sacrifices of people, animals, and nature. And a lot of nonsense gets put on us in order to maintain that arrangement. It's a pattern that's proving hard to break. It is one reason that it's hard to embrace self-care, because with self-care, you are breaking a pattern of self-sacrifice that's inherited, it's approved of, and even forced. And you can be concerned that when you embrace self-care and others don't, that you will harm your relationships, and that may happen. A joy practice eliminates the conflict, and it breaks the negativity around it by connecting self-care with the caring of others and the planet. That doesn't mean that other people can see it. So there may be people that, feel like you're in conflict with them when actually you're doing something wonderful. But it's important to recognize that after thousands of years of sacrificial arrangements, which is what we've had, that upending it is a big deal. So you may bump into some difficulties with people around you when you do that. The energy of sacrifice devalues the lives of some people, and certainly animals in nature, as basically instruments to be used as a form of entitlement that comes from having the upper hand. We can feel it sometimes, and I think a lot of feelings of powerlessness come from this attitude. Women and people of color are among those who deal with these feelings and are frustrated by the mindsets that support them. We can feel the wastefulness in these attitudes in our culture, and not only can it feel numbing, but we also may interpret it as a sign that we're defective or unworthy. And we are encouraged to think that way so that we're continually sacrificing in order to serve those who have the so-called upper hand. And it is one of the underlying cultural patterns we need to flesh out of our lives through a joy practice. It's a great way to notice the degree to which a cultural system comes to be how we view ourselves, the messages and ideas behind a cultural construct. We end up interpreting them as being a symptom of what's wrong with us. We want to cultivate an energy for ourselves that's wholehearted and constructive rather than wasteful, without being self-sacrificing, and a joy practice helps you do that so you can feel good about yourself. Now, joy isn't the same as fun and pleasure. It's deeper and richer. It connects with the good in ourselves, each other, and the world. It has, as a result, the ability to make life work in a way our current approaches don't. A joy practice makes the best of things, and that's a very healthy attitude and intention to have, and whatever that happens to mean at any given time. It's nourishing rather than dogmatic or punitive or perfectionistic or escapist. So it lets you show up, but it's gentle. There's no fight. There's no conflict. There's no strong arming. There's no violence in it. The world has been built on rejecting the loving true self, the unknown, the good in life. And there's a huge amount of rejection crippling us. And that needs to be released so we can live robustly and generously. This rejection has been the foundation of many older cultures and still exists today. And it's something most of us struggle with, because this rejection makes it hard to be proud of ourselves. This inadequacy that I was just talking about is a big part of the difficulty that we have in being proud of ourselves, because we have internalized that we are defective when in fact we're not. Our social structures don't bring out the best in people. So people are always trying to support themselves against a system that's not supporting them and constantly telling them that they're not good enough. This belief in life as being primarily negative and people as primarily negative has filled much of how we have done things for thousands of years. These ideas have defined what is so-called good and bad, in which, as time has passed, we have discovered to be too simplistic and often just plain false. This anti-bad negativity is not a reliable anchor of life, and narrow and rigid definitions of morality are not life-serving, and they're too often deceptive. Our cultures have built structures and systems with absolutes used to keep out the bad, but which do not foster and cultivate healthy goodness. They are not the same objectives. A joy practice elevates, honors, appreciates, and celebrates the good in ourselves, others, nature, and the world, which neutralizes and reshapes our relationships with these negative messages inherited from the past, and it makes it easier for us to feel in control of our own energy. A joy practice turns life into a new experience. For starters, when you bring your energy into your body and listen to it, it naturally seeks and notices the good. Animals are naturally aligned that way. It's an interesting experience to sit and notice the good in yourself, others, and the world. Your energy automatically feels lighter, safer, and kinder, as opposed to the energy of bad, which activates defensive feelings. Self-appreciation is one of the best antidotes to this kind of negativity, which really is a kind of cynicism that's baked into our cultural systems. You reclaim your goodness and value from those who would define your value for you in ways that serve them and not you or quality of life. Making this one shift in what you focus on and notice is important in healing. I think it's interesting that we have made bad and all this negativity about bad normal and good something that we have to struggle for or fight for. We can change this through perspective and discernment about the social dynamics that harm us and having an alternative approach that takes better care of us. So let's get into some of the specific changes that come from a joy practice. So there are a whole bunch of gifts, and these are just a few of them. For one thing, you will feel more open because you're clearing out the energetic knots created by old false narratives. So you open up your space. So there's space for you, others, and a changing reality. There's less of a need to defend yourself because of the constructive focus of a joy practice, which eliminates self-defeating extremes and looks for ways to contribute to well-being. And that makes life easier for yourself and others. The cultural systems we have now are always looking to put you on the defensive by making you inadequate or wrong or something as a way to lay claim to your energy, to get more out of you. It's exceptionally exploitive. Next, you'll have more wholeness. You have space for lost aspects of yourself, and this is very, very important. And it is amazing to me the degree to which we have to give up important parts of ourselves to be accepted or even tolerated within these cultural systems. And you will notice that things that have been rejected, like wonder, curiosity, and creativity, they show up more because they're part of the good in you. And so they show up, and your joy practice makes space for them. And that all the judgments from the toxic mindsets, you'll find they become irrelevant and inappropriate. You'll see the wrong in them. You'll see it for what it is. And so you have a stronger inner balance that comes from that you will help you sidestep some of the misguided drama and also the contempt that a lot of these cultures have built into them in order to maintain control over you. You'll also discover that the war is over because you're not overbalanced in the direction of the energy of bad, the demonizing energy, which is so prominent right now, and the negative cynicism that goes with it. You can invite the good, the unknown, and new possibilities. The cynicism needs to be challenged. It's wrong and it's cruel, but a lot of people are invested in maintaining that arrangement. They don't want you to know about the good in you. And so when you are in a joy practice, you can be flexible in working with life rather than fighting it. And that can help you relax. It also helps you to understand that when you're in a joy practice, which is low conflict, the war is over. There's nothing to fight against. And there's a lot more to work with because you're working with the good in you and the good in life and those lost aspects of yourself. So the defensive negative energies diminish. You don't have anything to apologize for. Your intention is constructive. Your actions are as constructive as they can be, given that none of us know it all. So there's nothing to defend. And being able to release that kind of defensiveness that we're encouraged to have about ourselves is very, very freeing. And then you also discover that yourself, and community, working with others, teamwork, don't have to be enemies or antagonistic. They should be mutually reinforcing and supporting, and they can be when we're open to change and working together to create sustainable and thriving life conditions. And that's a lot of where the human race is currently trying to get. A lot of the under the radar efforts going on are to make this happen. But there are a lot of people and societies that are still very anti-change and negative. And so there is still that antagonism. The joy practice eliminates it. And I think that the good in the world is demanding recognition. So some of this cynicism is going to have to fall away. Joy is also low mess because it's wise. and it has few side effects. So if you're intentional in being constructive and serving the common good, you're going to make choices that are the best that you can to serve that kind of intention. And as a result, you're not like a bull in a china shop, creating a lot of messes to clean up. This isn't perfectionism. It's not about trial and error and creativity. It's simply a natural outcome of how you focus your attention and intention and the choices you make. So you have fewer dramas and defenses because you're focusing on what's important and constructive. And so you reject ideas, agendas, and distractions that are destructive, that try to take you out of that energy. And that's important for your well-being. And it's good for everybody else. Another thing that's wonderful is that solutions are more important than the power structure. So a joy practice invites and has space for possibilities. It makes uncertainty easier to handle. It creates more security than the so-called security that shuts down new ideas to maintain a power structure. We are better served when we invite ideas and solutions that are based in the present. So when you're focusing on the present and you're trying to work with reality, you have the ability to invite possibilities that it makes the unknown easier to handle. It becomes more of a resource rather than something to fear, but you're showing up to be present and taking baby steps in living life. So it gets rid of a lot of the fear of the unknown, which is such a big problem given our global system and all of the harshness in it right now. So that is a big relief that comes from a joy practice. And it does make forgiveness easier because you, in claiming the good in you, you are able to honor that. You're able to see it. You're able to claim it. You're able to see the mislabeling of the good in you as incorrect. And you can release the people who use the tactic of that, making you feel bad or make you wrong to dominate you. You can release them from your life. So just claiming the good in you is important in order to do that. And of course, the point of making you feel bad is to dominate you, unfortunately. So in understanding the cultural underpinnings of these attitudes will make it easier for you to release yourself from these mistaken mindsets. There are some people who like contempt, who like feeling superior, even if it isn't true. And they're probably not going to give that up unless something shakes them up in their life. So it's not a good idea to think that you're going to be able to reform them, necessarily connect with them, perhaps except maybe in some kind of transactional way. That's probably all you're going to be able to do. Another thing, you don't rob Peter to pay Paul. A joy practice accepts the present, the past, and the future and works with it in a naturally healthy way. So, and all of this for the intention of supporting the thriving of the world without denying the contributions of the past or the needs of the future. So it's very healthy and light in that regard. And you can lighten up because you don't need extreme willpower in an overstimulated world in order to survive. Self-care means you can be your best and you do your part in creating joy in the world with others, whatever that means in terms of what you have to give. And that's it. So a joy practice is naturally self-supporting and you don't have to force yourself to move forward. And your life becomes your own because you take your life back from all of these mistaken ideas about good and bad, from the cynicism and the overwork and the perfectionism. By its very nature, a joy practice directs your intention and focus towards serving the common good rather than these overly demanding and entitled hierarchies. And that gives your life back to you, and you can become much more comfortable in your own skin. I think that's one of the beauties of it. It's not something I've talked about much, but I think that a joy practice, by helping you connect with the good in yourself, others' life, you become much more comfortable with the world and where we are as a species in terms of what has been created already and what we have to work with. And you also become comfortable in your own skin. And that's something that you deserve, actually. That's something that gets taken away from us in this cultural system with all of the negative messaging. And because you own your own life, you'll live ecologically. There's no ladder to climb, no one to beat. And so you're free to live in conversation with others. It's much, much lighter, and it's not competitive. Oh, Amelia, you have to unmute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I sure can.
Okay. I just wanted to briefly, I don't want to interrupt your train of thought, but I wanted to briefly share an example of how what you're talking about has affected my life. Um, because I had a lady at work that was focused on power and hierarchy. She felt like that to be happy and successful, she would, she had to climb the ladder, and she was real brutal about, getting anything out of the way that kept her from doing that. So that was her reality. I mean, that was how she looked at the world. And unfortunately, I was one of the people in her way. And so this joy practice would have helped me so much in that situation, that of course I didn't have that perspective then. But once you realize where people are coming from, and what they're trying to accomplish and what their intentions are, you can either choose to, you know to I spent a lot of time feeling bad about myself. I was like, why didn't, what did I do wrong? And like you're
Mhm,
talking about, I internalized the hatred and the malevolence and everything that was going on. And so, but at least now I can look back and see that, what her intention was, what her world reality was. And it does help you forgive a little bit, because, well, some of it's time, getting away from it. But it does help to look back on it and understand that it really wasn't anything I did. It was just how
mhm,
she perceived the world. And the way I am, I like to collaborate and, and have everybody work together, for a common good. And, that just didn't fit in with that hierarchical structure. So I just wanted to give a living example of what you're talking about, because
mhm,
I have been able to see what people's intentions are a lot better.
mhm. Yeah, I think that's really important because we are taught to blame ourselves, and we are taught that it's up to us to make things work. So, in other words, the burden of these kinds of systems is really put on the individual. And what hasn't happened, and I think it's starting to happen, is that the structures themselves and how they create this burden for people are being challenged. And I think this is new. I think, it's things like these cultural patterns that have been, that people went after in the last half of the last century. That was a big deal. I remember when I was young, people were starting to look at patterns because they wanted to understand this nastiness and this misery that was being created. And it's just by understanding these patterns that we can begin to see how it works structurally. And I think that's putting us in a position now where we're able to say, okay, this has to change, but we know why. And so I think it's in everybody's interest to try to be as informed as possible about that and move into a new way of living. But you're right, it is very, very hard to deal with. And you don't, you're unlikely to succeed in being collaborative and gracious with people who have that mindset that you described, Amelia, unfortunately. I oh, this is kind of funny. I was in a networking group, and I was the head of the group at this particular time. We rotated it. And so I was inviting everybody to get together outside of these 1 hour meetings that we had every week so that people could get to know each other. And when people get to know each other, they find reasons to work together and all that kind of thing. And I was treated quite badly about that because I was inviting friendship. I mean, it's such a mindset that climbing the ladder and getting the sale and this, that, and the other thing, some kind of conquest of some sort, is more important than the spirit of friendship. And that's actually totally wrong. But anyway, it's all over the place, this kind of thing. So thanks for sharing that. Appreciate it. All right, so let's talk about how we are going to go about this. Um, so there are certain things you have to have if you're going to actually make this shift, because it's a big one. And one of them is that you have to have the lay of the land You have to understand the cultural systems, how you got your identity from it, where some of your emotions come from as a result, and the energy, your energy, and how they interrelate. And so we like to get into the structures and the social dynamics that keep this social story in play. And it also keeps us traumatized because we know we don't really deserve this. And deep down, I think we know that, but it's hard for us to see how we can live differently. Then we need knowledge about what needs to be shed. So we talk about authoritarianism and the legacy of the past because they are the causes of so many of today's problems. And we're seeing authoritarians act out in multiple places in the world, including here in the United States. And it's obvious that they are problem creators. They're not, the people aren't. It's really the authoritarians that are creating a lot of the problems, they and their cronies. Many of our challenges come from a harness that's been put on us. It is easier to let go of it once you see it, and you'll have a lot of awareness about the forces shaping our lives and what needs to be let go of or shed. It is a challenge sometimes to think about, okay, what do I do once I let go of this? Because so much of the world is still there. But you do have to release yourself from it, and you have to know what you're releasing and why, and that makes space for you to show up in the world in a different way and make some choices about what you want to put your time and energy into. You also need to have insight into the cultural shift we're going through. So I focus a lot on the emerging culture because a lot of work has been done to create a new thriving foundation for the world that is basically going to be much more joy-based. You do hear about people talking about joy more now, and I think that's part of it is because people are starting to see that what we're doing isn't working for us, and they want something different. So you'll learn about all of the different aspects of the cultural shift, and you'll can start making some choices for yourself that are different as you release yourself from the old ways. And that helps you to participate in rewriting the human story to be one of thriving. And it also helps you to create a new energy foundation and release with awareness the noxious controlling patterns of the past. I saw something interesting very recently, and I thought it was so true. And that is that whenever we cooperate, cooperation creates a feeling of joy. We love to cooperate. If you look at little kids, they come into the world and they're all in. They're excited to be here. They want to cooperate. They're ready to participate. It's natural for us to want to cooperate, and it's important for us to get the joy that comes from that. But when we have systems that are destructive, we're forced to cooperate with things that aren't in our best interest, and we don't get the joy that comes from cooperation as a result. I think that's cruel. So we need to reclaim the benefit and joy from our cooperation, and joy practice helps you do that. You'll see how the past has led to this time, so you'll have perspective about that, because we are going to be totally overhauling the human story from surviving to thriving. And then you'll have greater happiness with your life and your possibilities. It feels good to be in a joy practice and not just stuck with what isn't working. And it is a change. And you do have a lot to shed to get there, but it's worth it. And there are so many people doing the work and this work in the world now that even though it may feel like, or you're out on a limb all by yourself, actually, there are so many people you can connect with who are in the boat with you, even if it doesn't feel that way. It is one of the aspects of these authoritarian systems that they like you to think that it's either them or nothing. And that's not true. And also, we connect the dots. And this is one of the most important things we do along with the energetic work. We'll see how the dots connect. These dots, once you understand them and can connect them, they become a beautiful inner resource, something that you can use as a kind of reality check. And it gives you a strong core based on knowledge and insights to empower you. So you get an understanding of sense and nonsense, and it's yours. And it's not something you'll be able to see it. Your own inner intelligence will be able to claim it. So the dot connecting and the energy work is some of the most important parts of what we do. And they will offer you wisdom, perspective, and the strong inner core that you need to live from in this time. The world wants you to be wounded, and it wants to appropriate your heart with false victimhood to keep you down and tied to these old systems. We're seeing a lot of that right now. It's interesting to see how authoritarians create harm, and then they also claim a narrative of victimhood on top of that. It's very, very nasty. So a joy practice lets you live from a joy-creating place rather than from those old wounds. And it's a beautiful release from the old oppressive ways of the past. And you can invite people to enjoy freedom with you as you make your way through it. So this is built on many decades of my learning about the intricate dynamics of outmoded and toxic cultural systems. It exposes and unravels the patterns so you can break free. It's a unique perspective, and it's a unique program. We provide you with the tools and processes so you can release the confining models of the past for new possibilities. Through this joy practice, it's built on the foundation of what I call the 3 C's, being constructive, caring, and serving the common good. So you're basically eliminating all of the toxicity. So I want to tell you about what a few of our members, a couple of whom are here, have said about our programs. So one lovely woman, her name is Amelia from North Carolina, said, "I'm a sensitive, heart-centered introvert with emotional trauma in my background. It sounds pretty bad when I put it all in one sentence, but I share it because I want to let everyone know how much Maria's programs have changed my life. I went from a shy and frightened person who always focused on what could possibly go wrong. You know, our systems encourage you to do that, to a person who's hopeful, joyful, optimistic, and feels ready to handle the good and bad things that happen. I've been working with Maria for 7 years, and she's changed my life. Let her do the same for you." And I'm very happy for Amelia. I've watched you change over the years, and I love how relaxed you are. And even though life hasn't always been so pleasant for you in recent years, I'm so impressed with the way you navigate the ups and downs and claim the joy in life that you deserve. So I think you have many happy years ahead of you. And then Anne said that Maria's program offers a fresh and well-researched take on empaths and human development. The learning and growth and camaraderie for empaths are wonderful. And combined with the healing sessions that are incorporated, this Sunday morning class has become my uplifting and educational form of going to church. I don't really think of myself as a priest, but I am happy that you're getting that benefit because there's so much in the Magic of Joy course, she says, of profound depth. I've been joining in repeatedly and will continue to do so. Then another member, Claire, said, the Magic of Joy course is a hidden gem, a gem that is polished and beautiful. I've followed many courses in personal development, but this one is different. Maria has built a course that connects the dots of my past, which haven't always been easy, and with an overwhelm of emotion. Maria has helped me to think and understand why those dots were a struggle and given me space to not identify myself as much with the negative. And those dots can actually become a smiley, goofy picture. And throughout this magical adventure, not a journey, it didn't feel laborious at all. She's designed a toolkit for the head, heart, and soul with tools, poetry, meditations, videos, calls, and email exchanges, which have led me to this deeper overall sense of joyful possibility. I'm so grateful and excited about the future. And then from one person that I've known for a very long time, said this: Maria was my sensitivity coach 10 years ago. I learned a great deal about why I always felt like I didn't fit in and was afraid to express my authentic emotions and thoughts. It's kind of important because these cultural systems do claim our voice and destroy our capacity to express our voice, so that's important. Maria helped me deepen and clarify my values and understand why I was depressed much of my life. And over the preceding years, Maria became my mentor and consistently supported me with her warm-hearted coaching style. I also watched Maria evolve in many creative ways in her personal and professional life. Her generous and caring spirit consistently inspired me. I'm grateful and honored to know Maria as an example of a unique and rare inspiring teacher. I now share much of what I incorporated from her teaching with my own students. So that's from Judith out in California. So let me just tell you a little bit about what the program includes, because it's gone from a course, and I've offered this program in a lot of different ways over the past decade. So I've now turned all of these past programs and the really great things about them into a monthly program. And it is designed to help you develop a joy practice and gradually release yourself from the outmoded mindsets while cultivating a new life for you. I'm a great believer in taking things in baby steps through insights. So the idea is not for me to tell you what to think and what to be, but to have you say, okay, I can use this or I can use that. That makes sense. I can see why this benefits me. I can see why that isn't healthy, but from a different perspective. So what it includes is, first of all, a daily gratitude and manifesting practice. And this is where we develop a new energy foundation intentionally. So it builds over time through the daily practice. Now, I discovered it took about 30 days for me to begin to really feel the energy shifting inside me when I started doing this. And we'll also be sharing so that we build the energy quickly and strongly as possible. So I might say, you know, I noticed this today, and this I found this to be a great source of joy. And so when you listen to other people sharing, you go, oh yeah, and then it becomes part of your own energy. And so you amplify your ability to create that joyful, constructive energy in you more quickly and strongly. You want it to be strong in you. And then we're going to have monthly movie discussions. We've done this in the past with the Emerging Sensitive program. So we want you to have a lived experience of the cultural and energy dynamics that we discuss. So you need a way to engage with it, develop awareness, process your perception, and form conclusions, and turn that into an inner resource and invite new ideas about how to live from shifts in values and boundaries. I can give you the concepts, but you also need another way to say yes to this or yes to that, because the concepts help your mind. They help you to see how something might have been created. But when you look at the experience that people have as a lived experience in a movie, then you end up having a totally different relationship with the concepts. It becomes alive for you. Then we're also going to have a joy workshop every month, and we're going to work on change, whether in our life situations or cultural ones, focusing on deeper insights to create awareness and discover new possibilities. So in January, we're going to be getting settled into the joy practice and what it's all about. And in this particular workshop for January, we'll be discussing the skill of tending. So I've talked about the 3 C's, being constructive, caring, and serving the common good. So what do you do with that? The skill of tending is a skill that lets you take being present with the 3 C's as your foundation, and then finding a way to act in the world. So it's a skill that I think has been lost because our world has been focused on war so much. It's not the same as caretaking, because caretaking is generally a certain set of tasks. We're not just doing caretaking here. Tending is our ability to be present in what we do with that. So that's what we're going to be talking about in this particular workshop. And of course, we'll have energy practices, which we always do. In every call, we will have an energy healing. And that will help you to release the past. And then I'm going to be having interviews with authors and different cultural change makers to become aware of the work being done. You need to have a way to stimulate your imagination and hope for the future and find ways to live differently in the world, knowing that there are other people doing the work with you. And I also want to have skill interviews and workshops to develop new ways to live and work. And I'll come back to that in a moment. And of course, we have all the resources that we have in the program that have built up over the years. And then I have 2 bonuses that go with the program, and they're 2 courses. The first is the Embrace the Shift course. And this is a 12-part course that goes deep into the cultural patterns that we'll be talking about, that claim your mind, emotions, and energy. And that will help you to understand the cultural structures better. And you'll be able to work with that on an ongoing basis. I will be referring to them when we're doing the movies. So you can maybe, if you haven't had a chance to look at a particular cultural system, you may want to do that before we go into the movie, so you have an understanding of the cultural system that we'll be talking about in the movie. It's very helpful in that regard. And then also the Introduction to Ayurveda course. This is an important course because it gives you a way to begin to work with Ayurveda. I use Ayurveda. It's a 5,000-year-old holistic health system. Don't know of anything that compares with it for creating the healthy energy of bliss, for getting rid of all of the toxicity that can build up in your system. And because it's customized for every single person and every single person's constitutional system, it's very tailored. So you get to use the resources for diet and herbs according to what's right for you. And so I take you through that in this particular program and give you a lot of resources that you can use. And so you will get the concepts within the courses, but the monthly program is how we start working on putting it into action. So that's really important. And I briefly want to touch on, let me see, where am I here? Oh, gee, I'm sorry. I skipped some of the slides here, didn't I? Let me see. Okay. So anyway, let's talk about the monthly topics. I want you to briefly understand what kinds of topics we're going to get into, so you know. First is the cultural knowledge, all the patterns that we've been discussing. Then awareness about the realities of authoritarianism, so you're not deceiving yourself about possibilities and you can release yourself from its demands and the people who think they have a right to your time and energy. It can become it's an important boundary to have, and accepting that authoritarianism is not going to ever be friendly no matter what you do is important for your boundary setting. We'll talk about the joy practice and all that goes with it, including the new energy center that you create and setting new boundaries. And what does that mean with the joy practice? And we'll have energy exercises for inviting new energies and opening your energy imagination. And we also want to talk about reclaiming pleasure and adventure as part of a joy practice. This system we have is a grind. It's nasty. Suppose we were to shed all that, and now we have space for more pleasure and adventure in our lives. I think it's a good deal myself. That's personally how I would prefer to live. And then I want to provide you with a lot of inspiration from new social and cultural initiatives, people creating change, new approaches to living, simplification, ideas like that, and experiments in joy. And then the different kinds of workshops, like on new personal skills, whether it's things like forest bathing, forest yoga, Ayurveda, gardening, growing your own medicine, and that kind of thing. Workshops on collaboration skills like holding space, community building, the commons movement, which is out there looking to become more established in the world. So those are just some of the other topics that I want to bring in so that you have a greater connection with this new emerging culture. And so before we finish up, I just want to say one thing. I don't really know how to price all that you would need to do it yourself, frankly. You can do this on your own. It's not a bad choice. And that's what I've done. But it is expensive, and it takes a lot of education and inner work to do so. So, I mean, this chart gives you some idea of some of the replacement cost if you were to do it yourself. It is a lot just to get some of the cultural knowledge and some of the energy work, just to get those building blocks in place. But it gives you an idea. And I think it's a great way to go if you want to, but it's easier when you have someone who's already been through it to help you. And so we're offering this now as a monthly program at $25 a month with a 30-day money-back guarantee. And so if you're looking for a deep transformation, whether you want to connect with like-minded people, maybe you want new perspectives. I mean, everyone here has been on their own journey. So there are some things you have done for yourself and other things that perhaps you can benefit from. And it's designed for people who are in the process of doing their own inner work in their own journey so that they can benefit from this program. So I hope you're interested in joining us on this program. I think it's fun to try to reimagine your life and learn to reimagine with others. I think shedding the past and the toxicity is a wonderful thing to give yourself. It is for those who know they deserve better but are unaware of how cultural systems get in their way and what needs to change and what they can do about it. because so many good people go around in circles. I mean, I have done that. I've done a lot of going around in circles in order to process, in order to get to this place. So I know what it feels like, and I know how awful it can feel. So if you don't want to go around in circles anymore and want to be able to shift your energy and your commitments and your intentions to something that feels better all of the time, then this is a great way for you to go. So you can join today. I am going to send out a copy of this talk, and I'll be sending it out. That will have a link. So I hope that you will join us, because it will be an honor to have you if you